Hello. So about half a year ago or so, I bought this beauty, the 13-inch MacBook Air, the M4 version. And I bought it with the specific intent to use it for on-the-go photo and video editing. And since I already own a 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro chip, and the MacBook Air line is a way cheaper alternative and therefore probably also a more realistic alternative for many people, I wanted to use this video to talk about why I bought this guy in addition to my 16-inch MacBook Pro, why I didn't go with the 14-inch MacBook Pro, and how this has performed so far and whether or not I would recommend it for photo and video editing. So let's jump into it, but before we do that, let me quickly just talk you through why I even bothered buying this machine in the first place. So back in the days, early 2022 I think it was, I bought the then fairly new 16-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro, the baseline version, Apple's first MacBook Pro generation with an Apple silicon chip. The reviews were great, outstanding performance, especially with native software like Final Cut Pro 10, and at the time it was a true revelation for me. When I got the M1 Pro MacBook Pro, I actually had a 15-inch MacBook Pro with an Intel chip and the touch bar, and that MacBook's performance was so terrible that I had actually used my 11-inch iPad Pro for all of my video editing for at least a year at that point. Which, as you will imagine, was by no means a great solution either, with tons of performance issues, that small screen and crashes and so on and so forth. So yeah, being able to actually edit videos on my MacBook without any lagging or hiccups or burning through an entire charge within just 1 hour or so, that sounded very, very promising to me. Buying a MacBook Pro, even the baseline version though, was a huge financial investment for me considering how small this YouTube channel is and that I bought this machine specifically for video and photo editing. But I would say that it was well worth it. I would even go so far as to say that the M1 Pro MacBook Pro was probably the most important investment ever when it comes to optimizing my workflow and being able to put out higher quality videos. Probably even more important than any camera purchase. But there has always been one glaringly obvious issue with that 16-inch MacBook Pro, and that is just the size and the weight. Now, obviously, I could have just gone for the 14-inch MacBook Pro instead, and obviously, back then, I thought long and hard about doing that, but I ended up opting for the 16-inch MacBook Pro because, again, I came from that 15-inch MacBook Pro, and I sort of just feared that moving down to a 14-inch display would just feel like a bit of a downgrade instead. And so I kind of wanted to go all in. And truth be told, that 16-inch display on that MacBook Pro is just the most glorious thing. So glorious, in fact, that I have pretty much abandoned this 27-inch 4K Samsung display that is sitting on my desk right now, because while it is sharp and big, that screen is just terrible when it comes to color rendering, and so I have just used this big 16-inch display for all things color grading since I got it. With that being said, up until last year, 2025, I actually didn't do all that much in terms of traveling. Yes, I obviously went on the odd vacation here and there and visiting friends and family, and I might have even taken the MacBook Pro to a cafe here and there, but yeah, it really wasn't much of a regular occurrence. But since 2025 I started working a new job, and that job requires me to stay at a hotel, so travel to different cities, different places, anywhere from 2 to 7 nights each month. And you know, people sometimes ask me here on YouTube how I am able to make these videos and shoot photos while working a very time-consuming job, and this right here, this is the answer. I'm pretty much in hotels on my own with nothing to do anyway for multiple nights each month, and so why not use that time to work on a script edit a video, edit some photos, and so on and so forth. I love doing that stuff. It's actually sort of freeing my mind and certainly doesn't feel like work at all. And when I'm doing that while I'm on a business trip anyway, I'd have no family or chores around the house that I would have to take care of otherwise. And so after using that gigantic 16-inch MacBook Pro, traveling for about half a year last year, I decided that that's that. I need something smaller. I want something smaller. And also I don't want my main machine to potentially be stolen or get lost or whatever. And so I decided to go for a smaller, more lightweight, cheaper alternative that in theory should also work for what I wanted to use for, and that was obviously the M4 MacBook Air. But how about the trade-offs? Isn't the screen too small? Isn't there too little screen real estate? Can it even do all the things that I wanted to do in terms of performance? And well, let's talk about that. So I bought the 13-inch M4 MacBook Air with a 512 gigabyte SSD and 24 gigs of memory. Now I had thought about getting a bigger SSD, but considering how big the price hikes are if you do that, and also considering that I can simply edit bigger projects off of my 4 terabyte SanDisk Extreme Pro SSD, I decided to just save that money, and no regrets so far. And so yeah, to make it short, this MacBook Air has certainly been more than sufficient enough for all of my photography and video editing needs while I'm out and about. In fact, the first trip that I used this MacBook Air on was my motorcycle trip to Lake Como that I did last year, where I was putting the Hasselblad 907 X100C through its paces. And I just used that MacBook Air to casually edit like 400 raw files from that gigantic medium format 100 megapixel Hasselblad sensor. And it did it without breaking any sweat. Yes, exporting took quite a while, but to be fair, first of all, those files are obviously massive, but also I'm not quite sure if the MacBook Pro would have been any faster. Because yeah, those files are just huge and they take a while to export. But again, wasn't actually a big issue for me. Editing was buttery smooth, no issues whatsoever. And so yeah, when it was time to export those files, I just decided to hit the shower. And when I got back out of the shower, the MacBook Air was pretty much done, not quite, but pretty much done with exporting those files. As for video editing, I've actually used this MacBook Air to edit the vast majority of the videos that I have uploaded over the past 6 months or so. So pretty much over the second half of 2025. And again, no issues whatsoever. Yes, obviously there's less screen real estate for editing to have your timeline and everything in place. And that can be a bit of an issue at times, but it's never really been bad or kept me from finishing any project. And so in terms of just the raw performance, yeah, again, no issues whatsoever. No hiccups, no drop frames, no crashes, no performance issues. It can easily handle multiple streams and layers of 4K 10-bit footage, even at 50 or 100 frames per second with log grading in real time, playback, like no issues whatsoever. Exports are lightning fast. I'm using Final Cut 10 Pro, by the way, so obviously that's a native software and optimized to use Apple Silicon. But yeah, with Final Cut Pro, doing that kind of stuff is just super easy and super comfortable. It doesn't even get too hot. It gets slightly warm when you're really editing, or especially when exporting video files, but it never gets so hot that it would be uncomfortable to have it on your lap. And so, especially considering that even while doing stuff like that, battery life was just easily enough to get through the day. Usually I will have to take a break long before that MacBook Air wants to be recharged. And so yeah, overall, using it for that kind of stuff was just a breeze. Now, to be fair though, every time that I get back to the 16-inch MacBook Pro after using the 13-inch MacBook Air for a while, it's just insane to me how big and how bright the screen is, and obviously you can feel the difference with the 120 frames refresh rate on that MacBook Pro screen as well. It is a bigger screen, and obviously having a bigger screen is nice, there's just no way around it. But again, I would say that the trade-offs are well worth it for the 13-inch MacBook Air, especially when you're using it mostly like on the go. So in conclusion, the only real annoyance that I have with the 13-inch MacBook Air is that it doesn't have an integrated SD card reader, meaning that I'm now back into dongle life for when I'm out on the go and I want to edit photos and offload the files from my SD cards. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you are considering getting yourself a MacBook for this kind of stuff and you're wondering whether you should get a MacBook Pro or just a MacBook Air, there's obviously also a 15-inch MacBook Air if you just want the bigger size. But yeah, if you're wondering if the MacBook Pro would be the right choice, if you need the extra performance and so on, I would say unless you're doing anything that is just way more demanding than the things that I'm doing, just go with the MacBook Air. It's a lot cheaper, it's thinner, it's lighter, it looks great, yeah, and it will probably last for a pretty long time. Now, obviously, there are also good reasons to go with a MacBook Pro instead. I have one myself, again. The screen is a lot better, not just bigger, but brighter, higher refresh rate, and so on. The integrated speakers are a lot better. It does have cooling, so theoretically the MacBook Air could be bottlenecked by not having any real cooling system, and obviously depending on how you spec out your MacBook Pro, you might have way more headroom to make this thing much more future-proofed. So yeah, if you want all of those benefits, sure, get a MacBook Pro. But do you need the MacBook Pro? I would say probably not. If you do, you're not watching this video because you already know that you need the MacBook Pro. In closing, I would say don't just, look at the spec sheet and do not underestimate the insane powerhouse that is the M4 MacBook Air. I think it is insane that we live in a time where such a small device without any active cooling can do professional grade video editing and photo editing while still lasting for an entire day without needing to be recharged. It's just, yeah, insane. But anyway, that's all I got for you today. I hope this was somewhat interesting to you. And I will see you in another video next week. Until then, take care. Bye.